Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Tonight we have a late night insight video on one of the new Amouage Essences collection. You guys have been asking me a lot if I'm going to review this on the channel. So today we're going to start with the one that Amouage considers the future. I don't know, don't ask me why. They have a past, a present, and a future, but we're going to start with the future for whatever reason. And this is called Outlands. Actually, this is the most hyped of the three, I've learned. Just in passing, actually, I do not keep up with new Amouage at all. I'm like completely out of the loop, by the way. But I do have to say thank you, Allie, for sending this my way. I would not be able to talk about these, and I have the other two right here, as you will see, Reasons and Luster. I think Reasons is the past, and I think Luster is the present, but whatever. So today we're going to talk about my first early impression, let's call it, on Outlands. So before we do that, though, I do want to do a very quick unboxing. Very quick. I actually already even opened the box, so we don't even have to mess with that. So this is from John Beeble of January Scent Project. Thank you, my friend. I'm very excited to see what this is. John does some amazing work. He's been on the channel, and you can go watch my interview with him if you would like. So this is... Actually, I don't know what this is yet. Let's see. More paper. January Scent Project Christmas present. All right, so this is one of his new fragrances called Northern Flicker. Very cool packaging. So it opens up like so. And there you have it. I won't read this, but damn, that's a hell of a write-up. I really like the bottle. Look at that. It's really pretty. Color of the juice is very coniferous looking. I wonder if that's exactly what you're going to get. Northern Flicker. So yes, you'll definitely be hearing me talk about this on the channel. Just a quick little blurb. Northern Flicker began when I opened a bottle of Pine Absolute. I mean, it looks like Pine Absolute. Look how green that is. Smelling this particularly beautiful material brings to mind the 1,000 small elements that make up a summer evening. Fireflies aligning near hedges, the sun sinking slowly against the distant sky beneath the trees, the increasing sound of cicadas, crickets, mockingbirds, and gray tree frogs. Pine Absolute was at the center of the stories that evolved in my mind. Very cool. Okay, so I'm excited to get to try this. You'll definitely be hearing about this on the channel, even though he was talking about summer. For whatever reason, these piney green fragrances always remind me of cooler weather winter. You know, I get like Christmas trees instead of like piney summers, but we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. So thank you. Thank you for sending this to me, John. Very, very kind of you. So I will get to that here in a little bit. And he sent me a personalized postcard. Very nice. Looks like he's saying it's limited to only 300 bottles available for sale very soon. So if you want a bottle, it's going to be kind of one of those limited editions, it looks like. Okay, so let's talk about Outlands and the new Amouage. First things first, I have a list of things I want to bitch about when it comes to the new Amouage, okay? A litany of complaints before we start talking about the smell. Number one, the previous regular release Amouages, right? So, you know, when something like, I don't know, like the other day I wore this. This was Sunshine Man, okay? So when it came out, it was, I think, $360. That's what it sells for on the website right now, is $360. This is what you can get 100 mils of some of these past releases, like something like Sunshine Man, which was discontinued, and then they brought it back. They said they found enough materials to make more bottles. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully they don't take this away, as this is one of my all-time favorites, and I will be reviewing this very soon. But most of the Amouages are $360, let's say, in the regular line for 100 mils. Now, in the new Essences line, we instantly jump up to $450. So we have a $90 hit right out of the gate higher, okay? Now, the brand will say, well, that's because this is a special Essences line, and it comes with a new bottle, and, you know, it's the first new Amouage bottle in 15 years. Obviously, one of the most expensive things is having a new bottle. You know, you have to make a new mold and all that stuff. So that is an expensive process, and they're getting their money's worth by charging more. Also, the Amouage logo is on the bottom of the bottle, which I find the absolute strangest thing. And the logo on the bottom is like a mixture of like an Amouage logo and like this weird watch plate plaque thing. So again, when you set it down on the table, it's on the bottom of the table. What's the point of putting it there? Strangest thing in the world, in my opinion. Next is the fact that they did a special perfumer's batch at an even greater premium. So in case that wasn't enough, scooping up the extra $90, act now or else you're going to miss out on the special perfumer's batch, which was, here, let me read you from the card that Allie sent me. We are honored to share with you one of the very first bottles from the perfumer's batch of Amouage Essences, a collection that embodies the pinnacle of our craft. This fragrance comes from the inaugural barrel, opened and meticulously evaluated by our perfumers on 1st of September 2024, following a 6-month aging process designed to enrich the creation with unparalleled depth and complexity. So, Amouage has said there will be no difference between the perfumer's batch and the batches going forward. I'm sure later on, as the years go on, some people will be selling the perfumer's batch for like 3 times, what the regular bottle goes for, saying, oh, it's completely different or whatever. But anyways, that is neither here nor there. That's another bitch in the RAM column right there. I am not a fan of a perfumer's batch. Very, very suspect. Very, very gimmicky, okay? So, next, they are doing this aged in oak barrel thing, which they're acting like is some revolutionary process, which all of a sudden is sweeping across the niche landscape in the fragrance world. But it's not something that's absolutely new. There are fragrances in the past that have done bits and pieces of either aging in oak barrel style or using bits and pieces from ingredients that are aged in barrels. Like for example, Creation E by Roja is one of my favorite cognac-based fragrances, and there's actually a cognac essential oil that sits at the bottom of the barrels, and they can scoop it up and use it. And that adds a lot of the same sort of woodiness that you're kind of getting here. Now, the purists are going to say, well, that's totally different. That's just one ingredient. They're actually aging the alcohol and all this other stuff in the Amouage. Fair. But there are fragrance brands, like, for example, I reviewed this on the channel. It got very little love. Very few people watched it. To be fair, it is a discontinued fragrance, but it's from the house of DS and Durga. It's called Spirit of the Glen. And I will tell you that Spirit of the Glen is one of the greatest aged boozy fragrances I've ever smelled, ever. It beats these Amouages that I've smelled hands down. And so I don't think this sold for $450, I'll tell you that much. And you can go watch my full review if you would like, but they actually worked with Glenn, either Glenn Fiedek or Glenn Levitt. I can never remember. One of the Glen Scotch companies. I think it was Glenn Levitt. They worked with Glenn Levitt, I believe, and Glenn Levitt allowed them access to some of their old barrels that they used to make their Scotch, and they allowed them access to the sediment of the bottles. And so the oak note in here, this aged boozy oak note, is off the charts, better even than what you get in the Amouages, in my personal opinion, okay? But again, this is a discontinued fragrance, very, very hard to find, but if you're into sort of boozy fragrances that have this aged process, this came out like a decade ago. So, to me, this is nothing new, what Amouage is doing. They're trying to make it seem revolutionary, but it's not, in my opinion. So, my final complaint, and then I'll move on. The fucking bottle is one of quite possibly the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. My $20 lotion from Costco looks better than the bottle that, they're putting this in. It is horrendous. I mean, it looks like a lotion bottle in my opinion. I mean, even with the pump on it. Give me this bottle with the pump over the thing Amouage is in. So, anyways, that's my complaint. We'll move on to the fragrance, but that's my litany of complaints about this new Essences line, okay? So, one more thing, real quick, before we move on, actually. I'm not done complaining. Christopher Chong made many of my favorite Amouage fragrances from the past. I have said over and over again that I feel like losing Christopher Chong at Amouage was one of the biggest losses, at least for me, of any creative director leaving a brand, okay? Christopher Chong leaving was like, the end of Amouage was like that point right there for me. Everything after, it was like there was everything before Christopher Chong left and everything after, okay? And when the Fish Band came in, he started to take Christopher Chong's work like a vampire and live off of it. And what I mean by that is that all of a sudden you started to see flankers of Christopher Chong's old work. You saw Interlude Black Iris. Then you started to see the exceptional X-rays, which that word just pisses me off in and of itself, the exceptional X-rays. And it was basically Christopher Chong's work in a higher oil concentration sold for much more money, okay? That is not why I would pay big niche prices when to get something that, you know, I have samples of Interlude 53. I have Interlude. I would not pay what they're asking for Interlude 53 if you already have Interlude. It's just something that's monotonous in my opinion. If they start going back and then doing the exact same thing that they did with that exceptional X-rays with this aging process thing, if we start seeing like reflection aged because they aged it in a barrel for 6 months or a year and then are trying to charge double, fuck that, Amouage. I mean, it's probably exactly what they're going to do because it's the biggest slap in the face to, you know, consumers who love art in a bottle and love smelling something new and different. They'll probably just do exactly that. But that is something that I really hope they can stay away from because, my God, that is just, I mean, it's the pinnacle of just laziness to me. Just taking your old work, tweaking it a little bit, and selling it for double the money or whatever it is. That is, I am not happy with that as an Amouage fan. Okay, enough of the complaining. So, all that being said, right, this line of fragrances, this Essences line, is inspired by the past, the present, and the future. I know most of you guys are expecting me to bash the fragrances, but at least starting with the one we're talking about today, Outlands, and at least starting with the opening, I'm going to put a big pin there, at least starting with the opening. When you first spray this on your skin, I actually like the fragrance, okay? How it starts off. The problem is after a couple hours that it sits on your skin, but when you first spray, it's a good opening. I really like the complexity, the depth. It's interesting because so this is the one that is supposed to be connected with the future. I have no clue how Outlands connects to the future. No clue at all. But I actually like how the fragrance starts out. After a couple hours, though, you're going to wish that it stayed in the past instead of moving on to the future. But that's just how modern Amouage goes nowadays. Now, Cécile Zarokian is the perfumer, and I have reviewed many of her offerings that she's done in the past on my channel. So you can find full reviews of things like Tango by Mask Milano. You can find a review of probably my favorite bit of work from her, which is also kind of her coming out party in 2009, called Epic Woman. And she had some help from some amazing other perfumers like Dorothy Pio and stuff like that, which don't get as much credit for this as they should. Cécile Zarokian kind of stole the spotlight on Epic Woman. But what you will notice, even with Outlands, okay, is that more than any other perfumer in the game nowadays, it really seems like her work really rhymes, okay? So if you know Cécile Zarokian's work from the past, you have an idea of kind of where this is going. So this probably would have been one of the fragrances that I would have put instead of the future. I probably would have put this as the past because it reminds me of her past creations. But again, I'm not a consultant for Amouage. They don't listen to me. So until they start paying me, the geniuses at Amouage have this. But what I like about Outlands is the opening is very bright and zesty, and you get hints of all these different phases of the fragrance at once, and you start to smell different parts of the fragrance, and you can kind of pick those parts out. So you're going to notice the spices. You'll be able to just kind of step into the spices and experience them. And you get spices with the tiniest hints of sort of what made some great Amouages from the past. So if you know some of the past spicy Amouages, like I reviewed Fate Man recently on the channel, there's the softest echo of this sort of spicy bit from Fate. If you know the Sichuan pepper opening of Journeyman, which I reviewed on the channel, you'll get this little spicy Sichuan pepper opening in Outlands. And you get this reverberating incense, frankincense, that's in the opening, very, very fresh, very bright. It smells very high quality, actually. And in the top, when you first smell it, first thing you get is this very fresh, lemony take on incense, okay? Which is basically LME, okay? LME is a fresh, lemony take on incense. And then later on, as the fragrance continues to dry, you get more and more of this traditional sort of frankincense in the base. Problem is, as it continues to dry, it also becomes much more ambery and much more sweeter, and that soaks up some of that frankincense. So probably my favorite part of the fragrance is that fresh sort of opening where the incense hits you. It smells like fresh. The LME is very, very lemony. And I know Reynald Salman is all about his new sort of frankincense project that he's doing. And to be fair, at least for the first hour or two, I would say, it smells like an Amouage. That's the part that I really like about Outlands in the opening, which you could not always say for some of the past work that they have been putting out for the last few years. Outland smells like an Amouage when you first spray, okay? At least in the opening. Everything I'm talking about so far is in the opening. In the base, so even when you first spray in the opening, you're going to get, like I said, the incense, you're going to get the spices, and you're going to get that, what I would call the Cécile Zarokian signature DNA, the thing that carries over from fragrance to fragrance to fragrance that she kind of seems to release. Many of her work has this benzoin, the warmth of like benzoin and ambers and all this stuff, and resinous notes, like there's a Papanax in here, which is like sweetened myrrh, and sweet is kind of the key word. And to be fair, the first hour or so especially, it smells very multifaceted. There's layers to the fragrance. It does feel thick, and it feels rich, and it feels dense, and it feels like there's all these sort of parts, sort of like you're diving into the barrel that they're discussing, and you're experiencing all these different layers. Now, Amouage marketing will probably point to this 6-month aging process, and they'll say, that's why, because not only did we age some of the fragrance, we also aged the alcohol itself and infused it with sandalwood chips and all the stuff that they're going to say, okay? I don't know if I'm sold on that part just yet, but at least in the top, the smell speaks for itself. And I really, really like the opening of the fragrance. The problem begins, though, is where she starts to use that signature Cécile Zarokian DNA, that ambery benzoin sort of warmth, okay, that starts to kick through. And the resins start to blend together. And there is this sweetness that starts to come through, which I think starts to take away from the beauty of the opening. It's hard for me to put my finger on exactly when that moment comes in, but there are different stages of the fragrance. In the opening, even though you're kind of sensing some of that sort of, Cécile Zarokian ambery warmth, bubbly sort of, that cuddly sort of ambery bit that she is so known for start to kind of bubble up. Even into the top, you can almost smell it kind of coming up from underneath. The different stages of incense, the fresher elemi in the top, the frankincense in the base, it's almost like different stages of like a booster rocket or something. It keeps my nose preoccupied, while the sweetness sort of sneaks by, it squeaks by. And even though I may sort of frown a little bit at it, it's okay for the first couple hours. The problem is there's a point where that event horizon is like crossed over, okay? And it just absolutely ruins the fragrance for me. The patchouli is very, very prominent in this release. I would say the patchouli is probably more prominent than most reviewers give it credit for. Once you get past sort of that multifaceted, multi-layered opening where the wood seems so smooth and dense and all that stuff, you could almost say that this feels like Amouage's take on like a sweetened vanilla patchouli thing, if you will, with Amouage little touches in the top. And I really think that that boozy sort of green patchouli is a big part of this fragrance. And it's funny because when Reynald Salman was interviewed on Persile's channel. There's an interview on his channel. You can go check it out. But there were some people in the chat that were really giving it to the Fishman. I mean, they called it a gimmick. They called it a marketing ploy. They said, is it really any different than, does it really make that much of a difference in the smell? And I think I understand, why this one was so popular. Of all of the three, this is the one that apparently is like the biggest hype beast. And it's funny because if you go to the Amouage website right now, they all three say low stock. Okay, so if you click on the Essences collection, all three say low stock. So it's like, act now, don't let future regret play a role. But I'll read you the blurb since I'm on the Amouage website. So here's what they say. An olfactory expression of the value of time. Okay, crafted through a revolutionary process, a double infusion with sandalwood and artisanal oak wood barrels. Each fragrance is okay. I feel like I'm reading a marketing blurb. Where's the actual write up? Outlands is an invitation to journey into the beyond. The opening note of the composition is unexpectedly light-hearted, an invigorating array of bright citruses emphasized by zesty lemon. However, as the voyage continues, the landscape becomes more remote and more extraordinary. A rich, multifaceted patchouli projecting heat, humidity, and verdancy in equal measure compels the intrepid traveler to move deeper into the cryptic landscape. Finally, an amber accord, reverberating with the potency of balsams and resins, entices a progression to the ultimate encounter, where we find ourselves reflected and remade. So I guess that is their description of the Outlands. As indescribable as it is familiar, Outlands makes use of extraordinary contrast between light and shade to capture the ever-shifting inevitability of the future. Okay, they could use some work on their write-ups, but that's what Amouage has to say about the Outlands. And, you know, I think I understand why this is sort of one of the most popular, why this is like the hype beast, if you will, because most folks nowadays are, especially if you're just like a casual fragrance enjoyer, you know, if you go to Macy's and smell what they have or whatever, you're used to sweetness. I mean, there's so much sweetness in not just in the designer game, but it's also crept heavily into the niche game. You know, used to be that niche was weird and different and out there. You know, it was like going to some small off the radar college town. It was like entering, you know, its own world. Going into the niche realm was never supposed to be about smelling designer like fragrances in $450 bottles, in my opinion. You know, niche was supposed to be weird and different. Just look at the original Amouages, or not the original, but look at the Amouages from Christopher Chong's era, things like Mitzman, and that was only 2016 or something. How out there Mitz was. I mean, that is just like really a museum piece, and I love it for that. And so what ends up happening is when you first spray, you know, you are hit with a fragrance that smells like an Amouage, but it smells like it has this depth and it has lots of sweetness on the back end. And I think that sweetness, if you're the kind of person who just sprays, okay, and makes up your mind. So if you just spray and smell, like most people do, they don't give it time to actually dry down. They just spray and smell. You would love this. I mean, you would think that you just hit a home run, especially if you blind bought this. Like if I blind bought Outlands and I had never smelled it, and the bottle came in and I took it and I sprayed it, that first 15, 20, 30 minutes, I would think, I'm like, this is a home run, successful blind buy. I love the opening. The opening is awesome. The problem, like I said, is once it develops and dries down, that sweetness starts turning into okay, I think I can still stand it. There are some other notes coming in. You know, the spices are still there. The frankincense and the freshness of the elemi are there. You're able to kind of keep your attention away for a little bit, but at some point that sweetness just grabs you, you know, and just turns your head. And I don't know if I could wear this and just let it dry normally, you know. I think if you gave me a bottle of this and I was to wear it as my scent of the day, I would just walk around respraying it every hour or two because I'd want to experience that top again. Many modern Amouages leave me wanting into the dry down, and this is no different at all. So I would be very disappointed if I blind bought this. I think at first I would be ecstatic, and then as it continued to dry, I would be, you know, crying tears. Once the clock struck 2+ hours, I'd be like, what the fuck? I mean, this is just so, it turns so sweet, it almost becomes unwearable for me. And that is a problem. Now, if you like sweet fragrances, this could be an Amouage for you. But again, that $450 price tag, man, I really feel like it's overpriced by like a factor of 2. You know, I think this is like a $200 fragrance, tops, in my opinion. So that's an issue, you know, but anyways, I mean, that's kind of my early impression on it. Very, very gimmicky. You know, it just really feels like you're buying into a marketing ploy. It doesn't feel like this aging process adds very much to me. So yeah, and it doesn't feel like this fragrance does anything new or different. You know, it feels like this could be any. I mean, all of the modern niche houses now feel like they're merging together. It's like you know when all it seems like all the corporations are merging into one giant corporation. You know, in Idiocracy when it's like welcome to Carl's Jr. U.S. Post Office. You know, and it's like this big long thing. Um, Costco, Carl's Jr., U.S. Post Office, or whatever it was. It was just this every single corporation combined together. That's what these niche brands are starting to seem like. It doesn't seem like there's much of a difference all of a sudden between Creed and Parfum de Marly and Initio and Amouage. They're all just doing the same thing, you know. And that is, I think, what is like the death of niche, because niche used to be so different. It used to be, it didn't used to be where all the houses were making something that smelled so similar. So to me, this is a failure. You know, I like the opening. Um, I would have liked to see that opening carried out more into an artistic way to go. But now it just seems like Amouage is all about making money. They're not about artistry or doing something different or trying new things or anything like that. It's a money making operation, unfortunately. So that's my take. I mean, I was if Allie didn't send me these, I just would have been okay never smelling them. To be honest with you, that's how low Amouage has fallen in my. In the old days, I would run and go buy whatever new Amouage or at least get a sample, like I did for Figment Man at first when it came out in 2017 or whatever it was. Um, I would at least get a sample. Worst case, now I could care less. I mean, unless someone sends them to me, whatever, you know. That's how far Amouage has fallen for me. And it's really sad. But anyways, that's my take. I'd love to hear yours. Thank you, John Beeble, for the new bottle. I can't wait to try Northern Flicker. I very well might even wear this as my scent of the day tomorrow to get to know it. But as always, guys, it's a pleasure. Love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Cheers, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.